I wrote a.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to CripChat, your weekly podcast for everything disability. Today I have with me Jonathan Shah, EBD,
Hello.
Phil,
Hi, guys.
and
Amy.
Amy, and myself, David D. Today we're going to be talking about uh, does supported employment pass the pub test? On to you, EB.
Thank you very much, David. Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Welcome to CripChat, your weekly.
Can you please like and share? And if you got any comments, please put it in the comment boxes.
No worries. Thank you very much for that, David. Hello, everyone. Welcome to CripChat, your weekly podcast on everything disability. As David mentioned, please like and share. Welcome, everyone. So, this episode will delve into the concept of supported employment for individuals with disability in Australia, examining its structure and the controversies surrounding wage assessments and the real life impact on workers. We'll explore whether supported employment stands up to the public scrutiny, the proverbial rub test. But firstly, welcome everyone. Welcome to the show. Phil and Amy. Before we do get started, please tell us a bit about yourself. What do you do?
Amy, why don't you go first? Ladies before
So
gentlemen.
I'm a sibling advocate. So my brother David, he has a significant intellectual disability and a physical disability as well. And because of the severity of David's disability, it creates real barriers to self-advocacy. And because of those barriers, I'm part of an organisation as well called Our Voice Australia, and I'm the vice president there. And Our Voice Australia really exists to give a voice to those people with significant disability who would otherwise not have a voice in the conversation about employment policy and reform.
Cool.
Very good. And I'm Phil. I'm Phil Hayes Brown, and I'm the CEO at Wallara in Melbourne. We're a disability support service. We employ around 250 people in supported employment, and I think it's a really important option for work. And I also have a daughter who's 22, and Phoebe is nonverbal and has an intellectual disability. So she's an NDIS participant, and she volunteers at a couple of places at the moment. I'm not sure whether she will get into paid work, but I really do think about that population with significant disabilities and their right to experience work. So yeah, that's what it's about.
No, thank you for that, Phil and Amy. Welcome to the show. Actually, let's get started. So, explain what supported employment is and its role in employing approximately 20,000 adults across Australia. So, do you feel?
Okay, well, I'll kick it off, and Ames, you and I can take turns on some of these. We'll just play it by ear, but I'll give it a crack to start with. So, yeah, as you said, about 20,000 people are in supported employment across Australia, and doing a whole variety of different jobs, and most of these workers are receiving a disability support pension. Because they have some barriers to work, and then they also are working and receive a wage for the jobs that they do. And over time, there's been a whole lot of different wage tools, if you like, that have been used over time, but they basically are trying to assess in a very difficult task to work out, productivity, isn't it? It's not easy to work it out. But they're trying to sort of say, okay, well, if you do half the job of someone who doesn't have a disability, then you should be getting half that wage, and on top of your pension and any other benefits. And you have the right to be part of the workforce as well, regardless of those barriers to work. So that's supported employment. And Ames, you might want to chip in a little bit on.
Yeah, probably two things I'll say. The first is that my brother David, he was a supported employee for over 15 years in WA. So I witnessed firsthand how much value these workplaces provide for people with significant disability. And the second point I'll make is that the genesis of supported employment is really around providing a workplace for people who are very much shut out of the labour market. And if you think about a mainstream workplace, so you might have a gap in the business, or someone might leave your organisation, and when that person departs, there's now a demand for that role. There's this role that's not being filled. We're going to go out to the labour market and we're going to recruit and we're going to hire for this role that the business needs. Supported employment operates in almost the opposite paradigm. And I think it's a really useful framing when we talk about the wages, because when someone comes to Alara and wants a job, Phil says, absolutely, I'm going to open my door, come on right in. It doesn't matter if there's a job available or not. It doesn't matter if the business needs that person or not. All that matters is that there's a person here with a disability and they want a job, and we're going to create space for them in our organisation so they can experience the pride and joy and privilege of work.
That's a pretty good.
I have a
Sorry,
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you want, you can continue. Now, you with the employment. Okay,
Yes.
we know people with disability get a pension. Now, it does get affected with some pensions, and some pensions don't get affected.
Yes.
They get paid.
Yes.
Now, the pensions that don't get affected, what rate do they get paid?
Well, I think what we're talking about here is something that we would like to see change a lot, because it's very unfair. But under the rules of the disability support pension, you're allowed to earn about $200 a fortnight. And then once you earn over that level, the government starts taking money away from your pension. So you're losing 50 cents in every dollar after that. We think that is ridiculous, and people should be incentivized and rewarded to work more. But that's what you're talking about. So
Yeah, well,
is that right? Yeah.
I guess that's ridiculous. If
Yes.
they're disqualifying you for going out there and trying to do something
Yes.
while you have a disability.
Yes. Now
They want
I can tell you.
Okay.
I can tell you something that'll make you even more angry, because it makes us angry. If you are an aged pensioner, you are allowed to earn more money than that before they start taking away any of your pension. And Amy and I and a lot of other people do not understand why there would be one rule for that pension holder and a different rule for people on the disability pension. We think it should be the same, and we should be encouraging anyone who has the ability to work to get out there, and they should be rewarded for working more.
Understood.
Exactly. Now, thank you for that, David. Ideally, yeah, look, it doesn't make sense. As people with disability, we have rights. We have the right to work, earn a suitable wage. So thank you for bringing that up. So building on our conversation, discuss the use of the pro rata wage tool. So created by the federal government and endorsed by the Fair Work Commission, which determines wages based on an individual's assessed work capacity. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, let's have a chat about this difficult topic of pro rata wage tools. And there were, over time, and again, Amy will do a better job than me, and together we'll do the best job we can. But over time, there have been lots of different types of wage tools. Well, Ara used to have its own wage tool, and we used to apply that tool ourselves and measure this as best we could. But over time, everyone has given those tools up, and we've all got behind, one tool, the same tool. So that's a good thing, that at least we're all using the same thing. And the assessment is now all done by independent people who turn up to the workplace and take some time to do the difficult job of measuring someone's output. That's the task, and that's happening all around the country. And it's not easy, of course, doing this. But the Fair Work Commission has looked at this for a long, long time, and they are the independent umpire around this. There are some people, guys, who hate this tool, and we shouldn't be using it at all. And they think that if you move, let's say someone without a disability moves 20 widgets in an hour. I know that I'm being a bit simplifying this a lot. Let's say that 20 widgets an hour is a productivity for someone without a disability, is the starting sort of level. And let's say someone moves 5 widgets in that hour due to their disability and other barriers. Then the tool is trying to say, well, given that productivity, what is a fair discount on the regular wage? And so if it's 5 versus 20, then you'll be getting about
25%.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So not easy to calculate that, but we do it together with the independent assessors. As we know, some people at work have good days, they have bad days. So if we think a worker is worth X, but the assessor doesn't think so, we'll argue. We were always trying to get those wages up, to be fair, and to pay those wages and see them rising over time as people learn more skills. So that is the pro rata wage. And Amy, you might want to chip in again.
Yeah, I think as well, the supported wage system, I think the intent of it's really important as well. And, we've got a big umbrella problem, which I'll just say is society with a capital S, okay? And ultimately, 90% of workplaces will make a decision to employ someone and pay someone based on productivity, based on efficiency. That is the world that we live in. And we can argue whether that is the right way for the world to be until the cows come home, but it is what it is. And so you find that when you're in that world, if you're not as productive as the person next to you, you're going to really struggle to find a job. You might not find a job because that's how it's designed out there. The supported wage system exists to try and balance that out and say, here is a mechanism that will get you in the workplace so that you're not locked out of the labour market as a result of how it's designed. And again, when we're talking about widgets and we're talking about the work that's undertaken in supported employment, I think it's really also important to recognise that for many of the supported employees, it's not just about the work, and really that forms a very small part of the value they find in these jobs. Most of the time, if you speak to a supported employee, they'll tell you that they love coming into an environment and seeing people that share their lived experience. They love having supportive job coaches around them who understand their unique needs and who can make them feel safe and supported. They love the energy and the excitement of being in the workplace, and the fact that, like their brother, like their sister and their uncle and their mum and their dad, they go to work and they get a paycheck. And those things are absolutely instrumental to their sense of pride and well-being.
Yeah. No, true. I guess it does make a person, feel valuable, when they contributed to society.
Yeah.
And so that's a very good point. Thank you very much, Phil and Amy. We'll move on. So, describe how the wage assessment tool functions when individuals' productivity is compared to that of a worker without a disability, resulting in a corresponding percentage of the standard wage.
Yeah. Well, I touched on that a little bit with the last one, but I can give you a better answer this time, because it's important to understand how do you do this, and it's a timing based thing. productivity. How long does it take you to do a certain task? So if it's folding laundry, or if it's making a coffee, or if it's, whatever the job is, if it's packaging, whatever it is, they'll time someone without a disability over an hour or over half an hour and see what output there is. And then that'll be the base figure, and then they'll measure one of our clients with a disability to see how they go. And we've also done timings and measurements ourselves over different times, so that when that assessor comes in, if we think, the level of output typically for that worker is X, but they have a bad day, and they do, maybe they get nervous because someone's watching them or something, or they just have a bad day, then we will point that out to the assessor. But so far, I've got to say that as this process goes on, I think the assessors are doing the best they can with this tool to come up with a very fair answer for each worker, on their output. And it's done in a generous way and an independent way. Remember, this assessor is paid by the government or by someone, not me, to do this work. They're an expert in applying this tool, and we want those wages to be as fair as possible.
Question.
And when there's
so I'm just wondering, do they put just an average on a certain person? But every person has got a different disability.
Yeah, that's right. So
you can't put one disability can do this much as this other person.
Yeah, well, basically, if we're talking about widgets or making coffees, let's say the answer is, as we said, maybe 20 in an hour or whatever this thing is, then regardless of your disability, if you can do 5 or 10 or 15, whatever your output level is, that will determine your percentage.
Yeah. So everyone's assessed separately?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you for that. So, Amy, do you have anything you want to add?
Amy, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, something I cut out from it there. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think as well, when the Swiss assessors come into a supported work site or any work site, because I think it's also important to acknowledge workplaces as well. But when they come into a work site, in their handbook, they've got a few requirements around checking to make sure that there's been appropriate, reasonable adjustments made for that person. Have they received training? They've got some considerations as well. So the assessors, are looking out to make sure this person they're assessing, they are operating at their optimum as well, and they've been given the tools and the training to do that.
Yep.
Thank you very much. We did lose you there for a few seconds, but thank you very much, Phil and Amy. We'll move on to the next question. So, when we talk about the disability support pension, explain exactly what it is, including eligibility criteria, such as having an intellectual disability with an IQ of say less than 70.
Yeah, well, I guess the rules around how you qualify for I'm not an expert on the disability support pension. I try to understand it, but everyone that comes to us looking for a job has a DSP, a disability support pension, and they're trying to manage that as best they can. So they've qualified, and it's all about. I mean, the DSP was created because, as we said earlier, some people have barriers to work, and so this reflects that, and it's a work supplement, given the disability. The IQ level is one of those criteria, and I know that, hey, that's not an easy thing to measure either, guys. My daughter, as I said, is nonverbal, and she went to a special school, and they assessed her IQ, I think, under 70. And that's what led to her school pathway. So not easy to measure and assess these things, but that's the process. And if people knock on our door, everyone in supported employment that I know is on the DSP. And if they're not on the DSP, then they don't have that barrier. They haven't qualified for that, and so they have more chances to go and find work.
Thank you. No, thank you for that. Awesome. Amy, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, when the Fair Work Commission was looking at the wage structure for supported employees, one of the findings and observations they made was the fact that when you look at the supported wage and the DSP together, it comes out pretty much around the minimum wage. And they found that to be a very relevant consideration in designing the wage mechanism, so much so that it's actually a legal requirement that if you are to be paid a supported wage, you need to be eligible for the DSP. It's part of the requirements. There are probably a few exemptions around migrants or whatnot, but by and large, over 95% or 90% support employees are on the DSP, and it's a legal requirement around that.
And guys, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for your interest in this topic and giving us this opportunity to talk about it today, because Amy and I, are trying to get this discussion happening, and it's great because sometimes, guys, you see a headline that says someone's paid $4 an hour and it's a sweatshop or it's modern slavery, and how could anybody live off $4 an hour? And we think that headline is really unhelpful. It's not fair. It's not telling the proper story. It's not giving people the right information. And, you can still have an opinion at the end of the day, but let's all be talking about the right information in this important story. So thank you for the opportunity.
No, thank you very much, Phil and Amy. Also, I want to just point out, when we talk about the financial aspects of the DSP, so DSP provides $1,150 per fortnight. So that equates to $575 per week, or $30,000 per annum, tax-free. Recipients can earn up to $200 per fortnight from employment without affecting the DSP. So earnings above $200 per fortnight, like you mentioned, results in a 50% reduction of the DSP for each additional dollar that is earned. So thank you for pointing that out.
And isn't that terrible? Isn't that terrible that we have a 50% tax rate is what it is, right? We think about other wages, and there's a tax-free portion of income you're allowed, and then it might start out at 20%, and then it goes up a bit more to 30%, and then it eventually gets up into 50%. But you are encouraged to keep working, aren't you? And rewarded and the tax slowly rises. I just think and Amy agrees, we think it's terrible that it comes in at 50%. And we see people with disabilities deciding not to work because of that tax rate, and I can understand that. That is such I think a terrible thing. So we'd love to see that either the amount you're allowed to earn increase or the rate lowered, or both.
It really discourages people to want to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Now, that's a very good point. Thank you very much for that, David. But yeah, I agree with you, Phil. It discourages people from, getting into the workplace because of that huge the tax burden. People, look at they have that willingness to work. We're hard workers. We're people that are committed to working in the workplace. We
Look,
just say, okay, go.
From what I'm saying, not that I can say, people that work that are disabled do a better job than a person that's able. And they put not 100%, they put 200% into it.
Yeah, often that is very, very true. Yes.
So if you get something made by someone with a disability, you have more of a chance it's made properly.
That's
Not
right.
uniform.
Yeah, I think
And
that speaks to it.
go on, Amy.
There's a bigger conversation around diversity in the workplace and the benefits of employing people with disability, and there are so many out there. I mean, it's less absenteeism, more loyal and committed in the workplace. Business profits is better because you have your workforce and your leadership represents the customers that you're looking to sell to. The benefits are endless, and there's no dispute that we want to see more mainstream workplaces become more inclusive, and that the benefits are for that mainstream workplace in doing so.
Yeah, thank you for that, Emma. We'll talk about the criticisms when it comes to supported employment. So discuss the headlines and advocacy groups calling for the closure of supported disability enterprises, labeling them as exploitative due to low wages.
Yeah, it's that is our biggest. I just don't think that's fair. As we said, the headline of $4 an hour sweatshop. Sometimes they'll say it's modern slavery. They use that phrase, modern slavery. I think that is just a terrible thing to say about. If you, I love showing people our workplace, and if you guys are ever in Melbourne and want to come and see, I would love you to visit because. And I know there are, better and worse. There are good and bad workshops all over in supported employment, just like there are in open employment, right? There are good employers who have nice buildings, and there are some shonky employers that have dodgy buildings, and we're trying to lift employment up everywhere, but the answer isn't $4 an hour is modern slavery, so this place should close. That is not fair. That is not accurate. And to suggest it is that tells me that you're not interested in the true story here. So, the real story is, as you've let us talk about today. It's a much more. There's a lot more to this story than just the wage rate. We have to be talking about the DSP. We've got to be talking about the work that is being done, the supply chains that we are in all around the country. Some people will say it's not meaningful work anyway. I think that is a terrible thing to say. If I can tell you now, the work we are doing in all our workplaces is very meaningful and important. We're in, for example, we pick and pack merchandise for St Kilda Football Club and send it all around the country. We're mowing lawns and parks and gardens, and the supported workforce across Australia is doing important work. No one should think it's just sitting around colouring in. This is real work. And yes, the groups that don't like it have lots of reasons why they don't like it, but the wages is on the top of the list. And there's some other things that they don't like too, like they'll say it's segregated, and say that cut off. Yeah.
Could you say that people don't like it? Some people don't like it because it takes away from mainstream people wages.
Yeah, well, I got to say, often the people the advocates that don't like it, if I can say this, guys, they don't have intellectual disabilities, they have physical disabilities, and for them, they want to be part of the mainstream workforce, of course, and they might need ramps for wheelchairs or more aids and equipment, and all those things need to happen. But the average worker who works in support employment has an intellectual disability and faces just very different barriers to work. So I think the work's important. And guys, we want to see as many people with disability in work as possible. I think that's what our country should be looking for, regardless of what type of disability you have, physical, intellectual, whatever it might be. If you want to work, we will try to include you, in that opportunity, because work makes us all feel better about ourselves, doesn't it? Having a job to do, pride, mental health,
You got something to wake up for.
Yeah, there you go. A reason to get out of bed. Pretty nice, isn't it? Yeah. A purpose. Yeah, look at what you guys are doing with this podcast. You know, it's a team. You work together. You're creative. You produce something. You know, you've got a reason, and people like having a purpose. So we're proud to offer that to our crew. But Amy can tell you a bit about what happens in other countries that have closed these workplaces, because we think that's interesting too. Amy, over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is interesting, Phil. This discussion that's happening in Australia about supported wages is occurring in the US, it's occurring in Canada, it's occurring in New Zealand, and we're all having this debate and this discussion. But what we've seen in the United States, and certainly what we've heard on the ground as well from advocates over there, is that when a decision has been made to phase out supported work sites or supported wages, the workers that are impacted by that decision do not end up moving into competitive or open employment. So they lose their current job because of these policy settings. And then the upshot is the vast majority move into community participation. They start doing recreation activities, or they're stuck at home having milkshakes through the TV, as one family member told me, and they're not working anymore. And that's really, really devastating for that individual, because they had so much pride and joy in going to work. They loved being there, brought meaning to their life. And against their control, against their decision, that was taken away from them. And it was actually also against their express wishes. And this is a really important point to make about the US, and is that they've looked at the supported wage equivalent over there a few times over the last few years. They looked at it in 2019, where they got thousands of people writing in to say, we deeply support this mechanism, please don't phase it out. We are really scared that we're going to lose our jobs, our friends, and become unemployed as a result. And again, 2023 now, so actually over a year ago now, they re-looked at it. And again, the feedback from the employees, their families, their advocates was overwhelmingly, please keep this setting in place. And yet there are states choosing to phase it out anyway. These people are losing their jobs, despite having screamed out, please don't do this. And I think that's the most devastating thing of all in this story, is that there was so much feedback coming in that was ignored by policymakers. And the other point I'll make...
Sorry, Ames, I was just going to say that in the disability sector, as you guys know, there is a phrase, nothing about us without us.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a very powerful phrase. So as we talk about supported employment and we ask ourselves, who should have the most powerful voice? There are lots of opinions out there. You know, everyone's got an opinion. Okay. But who should we listen to maybe the most? I think the answer, and Amy and I think you should be listening to the people in those jobs and their families and asking them, how do they feel? Do they feel that these jobs are worthwhile? What are they upset about? What do they want to see change? And not be driven by people who've never worked in these workplaces at all.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Well, a lot of people, I think, are looking more about productivity and money making.
Yeah. Exactly. Amy, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I'll think about my brother for this one to answer this question, because I think it's really important when we talk about supported employment, we don't necessarily cast our own lens over it. So my brother and I, we grew up together, but we're on very different life paths. And what I mean by that is that I graduated from school, I went to university, I graduated there, I got started a career, I bought an apartment, I've got my driver's license, and I've hit all of these typical adult milestones. Unfortunately, by virtue of the severity of David's disability, he needs 24/7 care. He'll never have the opportunity to live independently for his own safety and his needs. He won't have the ability to drive or go to university, get married, have children, go to the pub by himself and have a drink, all those things that we take for granted. But what he does have is the opportunity to work, to have a job. He can knock on the door of a supported employment provider and say, hey, I'm here and I would like to work. Because working is one of the biggest adult milestones that we have. And the supported employment provider says, yes, as I said before, we open our door to every ability here. come on in, we'll find a job that suits you. So when we talk about ending support employment or its faults, it's actually for many people their strongest and perhaps only tether to having a normal life.
Yeah.
Well said.
Well said. Thank you very much, Jamie. So moving on. Discuss whether the pro-rata wage system respects the dignity of workers with disabilities or if it requires reform.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I mean, we would like to see some reform. We've all agreed today that, well, we won't go down the pension reform. Let's just talk about the wage reform, because certainly the DSP needs some reform, and that tax rate we all said was terrible. But let's just stay with the wages. What we would like to see to stop this focus on $4 an hour or $5 an hour. First of all, just for the listeners here, $4 an hour or $4.80, I think there's a minimum amount, and then there's all the way up to 22, 23. I've got people at our organization who are on 35, $40 an hour and have grown their wages, all the way through. So there's a whole spectrum. But we are talking about pro rata wages here. And I would love to see the pro rata wage and the DSP talked about together instead of separately. Yeah. And that's what they call the social wage. And if you say, well, I earn this much from my work and I get this much from my pension. And so that means each week I get X dollars per hour if I think about that combined. Yeah. Because no one is being asked to live off $4 an hour. And even asking that question is ridiculous. Right? That just tells me you're trying to just cause, to make everyone still feel like there's exploitation, and that's not a fair question to ask. So let's talk about the wages and the DSP together, and then divide that by the number of hours that person works over the week and see what that looks like, because that's a very different figure. That's a very different number when you think about it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different figure, different amount. But is that before tax or after tax?
Well, the DSP is not taxed, right? It's not taxed. Yeah. So, and then the wages are so certainly. And we talked about the problems with the pension now. So there's a bit of work to do in all this, isn't there? There's a bit of work, but the idea, we think the pro rata wage, the pension, together, and then let's change that tax rate at 50 cents after $200. That's bloody stupid. You should be able to earn a lot more, and then the first tax rate should be about 20%, and then it slowly should rise. So there's a bit of reform needed, but we want that reform to happen in a way that protects these jobs and lets more people join the workforce.
I remember I used to get the DSP.
Yeah.
But I don't get that no more. They've changed mine.
Right.
Maybe because I'm blind. It's not disability support pension.
Oh, yeah.
It's a disability pension. Blind disability pension.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the eligibility rules around it. And I mean, just like the NDI, one thing we have to all work together on is as the government looks to save money in different places, that they, do the right thing by people with disability. Yeah. They seem to afford bloody submarines that cost, billions of dollars, and there's plenty of money for other things. So,
and to send it to Ukraine. And
that's right.
You can have that.
Yeah, and
So
I think I know the NDIS is costing them a lot of money, right? We hear about that. But again, if we think about the whole system, the more people that get into work, the better, isn't it? Because if you're in work, you're earning income, you're probably paying some taxes, or you're taking less pension, and so we've got to. The more we encourage that and reward that, the better for the country, the better for people's mental health and our economy. So,
and the less you need to use for medical.
There you go.
Because
that's a good point.
People will be, their head will be more screwed on, and more
Good
able
point.
to do things.
That's right. You've got purpose, you've got pride, you've got mental health, you've got social connection, and that leads to less medical bills and loneliness and depression and all those things. So you did right.
Now, thank you for that. Awesome, very good points, David. Amy, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I will, and I think that Phil's operations manager might punch me when I say this, but I'll say it anyway. One thing that I do believe requires reform about the supported wage system is that if I am in open employment, I'm legally entitled to a new wage assessment every year. If I'm in supported employment, I don't have that automatic legal obligation to receive one. And that really breaks my heart, because if you think about how much you can improve in a job in a year, in 2 years, and in 5 years, it can be very significant. But without that legal entitlement in a supported workplace, you're not guaranteed to get a wage assessment. And that means that your productivity that was assessed in year 1 is what you could be paid, for the next 3 to 5 to 7 years.
Yep.
And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair at all. I think that there needs to be
Right.
an obligation for wage assessments every year, just like there is in open employment.
That's same for any other worker. That's right.
When we
I totally agree, but that was all said. Yeah, there needs to be a wage assessment, for everyone.
Yep. All workers should be treated the same process, same systems, same review, annual reviews. That's right.
Exactly. Thank you both, Phil and Amy.
Once productivity can increase as they get more experienced.
That's right. That's right. And we are at our place, and I'm sure in other places, because I know I talk to a lot of people in the sector, we are seeing wages rising through this tool, and our wages are rising. The average wage in the country is about $9 an hour, right? And that over time has risen. And again, it's good to see people earning more, but we just like people having choice, variety, pride, and the chance to be work with companies and to have a reason to get out of bed. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, thank you for that, Phil. Awesome. So Phil, Amy, discuss potential pathways for reform, such as adjusting wage assessment tools, increasing funding for support services, or developing alternative employment models.
Yeah, well, we talked a bit about the reform pieces and the pension and the tax and how that we shouldn't be talking about $4 an hour or $5 an hour. It should be with the DSP and talk about this social wage. Are you receiving a social wage or not? That's a question we should be asking a lot. I'm doing the calculations now to find out at my organization we employ 250 people, and I want to know, how many of them, when we count the DSP, are receiving that social wage based on their hours worked or not, and what would it take? How can I make sure everyone is getting that social wage? I'd love that to be a real conversation that we were all talking about. But the other thing that I see happening here, guys, and Amy knows this too, is that we have been active now in helping some of our workers try and find work in open employment on a full award wage. Not everyone is able to take that step, of course. We know that that's not for everybody. Amy's brother is probably not going to take that step. My daughter may never be able to, and the average worker is not going to take that step. But some of them have the potential, and it's been great working towards that. So I love the idea that if you're in supported employment, one thing you should be doing, and we should be encouraging anyone in supported employment to do, is to provide and to work so that some people are getting the chance to go up to the next level. Yeah. and we should be active in doing that. And if that works, great. If they try that for a few months and it doesn't work, that's okay. They can come back, but they've tried it. We want to see more people trying more things. Amy, what do you want to add to that?
I think Phil's forgetting, because he's in Victoria, just how lucky he is to have the excellent social procurement policy that exists over there. But what would really help the uplift of wages, that's how we're going to frame this, and the diversity of jobs and the training pathways, is if there was strong social procurement policy across Australia in all states and territories. And what that would look like is that if I am a government agency and I'm building a railway, and I'm going out to a lend lease, I can set requirements in my tender package for the supplier to have to meet social good criteria. And that can look like providing X number of jobs to people with disability, providing X number of labour hours or training hours for me to win that work. And that then drives opportunities, and Phil can probably speak to the opportunities it's created for Woollahra and in Victoria for people with disability, and for organisations like Woollahra to evolve and expand their service offering so that they are offering diverse and contemporary jobs for their employees.
Yeah, I can add a little to that, guys. It's a really good point, because when you think about the freeways that are being built, or the train tunnels, or the bridges, or the hospitals, there's a lot of government building infrastructure going on across the whole country. And in Victoria, I think we're the only state that has this, that if you win one of those contracts, there's a target in that contract, and you have to spend some money against Indigenous or against disability. And so we've had companies, just like Amy said, Lend-Lease, knocked on our door and said, "Hi guys, we're Lend-Lease. We've heard of you. We're building a hospital in Frankston. We have to spend some money in the disability space. How can you be part of this project?" And now they're storing things in our warehouse, and we're working with them with 3 or 4 different companies now who are working on that hospital that we've never worked with before. So Amy's dead right here, that the government can be very active around this and change things, because that means more job opportunities, better wages, and we're all part of that infrastructure boom instead of being locked out of it.
Now, also, thank you for highlighting that, Phil and Amy. Some very good points raised. Jonathan, David, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, it sounds very good that the government can can help and allow this to move on quicker. And if they really wanted people with disability to work, they can always put conditions on things that they're building.
Yeah, it makes a real difference.
It makes
If
a real
you're
difference.
Yeah. For example, in Victoria, those level crossing train things where the boom gates come down.
Yeah.
They're a bit dangerous, right? And so they replaced a lot of those, and they built the overpass or the underpass, and it was a whole lot of work. And then so for things like the plants that they buy when they finish the job, they need to buy a whole lot of bloody plants from a nursery. Well, if they buy those plants from a disability nursery, then those dollars count against that target.
It counts that you actually, someone with a disability actually planted that and took care of it.
That's right,
and they would have got paid for it.
That's right. You buy the plants from the nursery, and then you employ other disability services to put the plants in the ground, mulch them, maintain them. So there's ongoing work provided from those projects. And I didn't realize until quite recently that we were the only state in the country that has this. So every state needs one, or nationally we need one, because it's a powerful way to drive more work and better work to the disability sector.
We need to put that up to Parliament.
Yep.
And see if we can raise it up there. That way, if not only the Victoria does it, the rest of the states do it, then you have more people with disability having more jobs.
That's it.
That's it. Call to action, David. That's awesome. No, thank you for that. Phil, Amy, do you have any, I guess, final thoughts on this topic you'd like to, I guess, add?
Well, I'll just say that you guys are the first. I wrote that piece around the pub test and supported employment because I wanted to have this type of conversation, and it's not just the $4 an hour headline, and it's got to be done, with. And you can still have people can still have an opinion about these jobs and whether they think those jobs are enough, or is $10 an hour fair or not fair. That's fine. Let's have that conversation. But we have to talk about the pension and the whole thing. Yeah, there's a really important conversation, and some people don't want to have the full conversation, guys, because they're really not interested in listening. But you guys, I've been delighted that you invited us on. And it makes sense to be obviously talking to a group like you guys who are living and breathing it every day. Yeah, and we really appreciate the opportunity.
A lot of people that don't want that conversation want to create division.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
thank you for that. Awesome. Amy, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think that when we talk about supported employment and supported wages, I want to create a visual for your listeners or for your audience. And because oftentimes we talk about people with high support needs or significant disability in concept, but we don't necessarily understand the cohort that we're talking about. When we're talking about supported wages, we're talking about 20,000 Australians. It's a very small amount. And I want you to picture in your mind my brother David. Now, David's favourite TV show is Thomas the Tank Engine. He needs someone to cut up his dinner every night. He needs help getting dressed. He needs help tying his shoelaces. Very significant disability. I want you to think about Ryan. And it took Ryan 6 months of dedicated effort and job coaching to learn how to untangle a pair of Qantas headphones. And that was a fantastic achievement for Ryan. And in the supported workplace he was in, that was celebrated tremendously. I don't think that you would see that kind of support or celebration outside of supported employment. And I think that most people with disability, the vast, vast majority, are very, very capable of untangling headphones. Let's be clear about that. So when we're talking about supported wages, that's the cohort that we're talking about. And be very clear on that very small group of people.
Yeah. Just visualize it to the audience out there. Thank you very much for giving us the scenario, Amy, and thank you very much, Phil and Amy, for being on the show and having these conversations.
And
I
if
think
you
it's
ever want to come back on, you're more than welcome.
most
Wow,
definitely.
we've enjoyed it. We've enjoyed it. I think Amy's got that. We talk about lived experience here, don't we, in the sector? We talk about it a lot. And you guys have all got it, right? And
Yes.
I've got a bit through my daughter and my work, and Amy's got a bit through her brother. And, all of us bring different views and perspectives to the conversation. And it's really nice to bounce it around with you all and to have the chance to talk about it fully and properly. So we're grateful.
A
Now,
lot of
also,
people,
thank you
a
very much.
lot of people like to sweep it underneath the table where they feel like it shouldn't be spoken about. They feel embarrassed,
Yeah,
but there's no embarrassment here. It's life.
yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And Jonathan, you've also reached out to me on LinkedIn, and now that I know who you are, I'm going to accept, and I look forward to staying in touch with you guys. Okay.
Thank you.
Now let's keep these conversations happening. Thank you once again, Phil, Amy, for joining us. It's been a pleasure, having you both on the show. We look forward to further having you on the show in later on. For
Awesome.
everyone out there, if you watch a CripChat, you're working podcast on everything disability. Join us next week as we talk about more issues related to the disability world. For now, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks for having